So you're a dancer, choreographer, actor, and curator. When did you become an activist, if that's how you define?
I think, without dwelling too much on labels, it was probably when I was around the age of 7 that I became an activist, yeah. When I became politically aware and was very happy to challenge what I didn't agree with. I think it was a number of things, and just my upbringing, coming from my mother, who is a humanitarian, I guess, and yeah, being dragged along to certain marches, demonstrations, or being educated on certain issues, and also being empowered as a child by a mum who always believes that children had a place to talk, challenge, and should be empowered. So yeah, I can remember probably being about 6 or 7 years old and my mum dressing me in a top that said "kids are people too." And I think that was part of the ethos. We never had dummies as babies, so always allowed to express myself.
What kind of marches do you remember being taken along to? Any ones that you remember?
Yeah, I can remember some in Bristol and also travelling to London. I think it would probably have been connected with things like militant labour or socialist worker, and it was a lot of anti-far right demonstrations and things like Stop the Asylum Bill. And then going a little further back, it was protests through St. Paul's calling for Barclays Bank to get out of town and kind of the anti-apartheid movement. I guess growing up, I was more aware of perhaps an African-American journey through civil rights and, protest and that kind of stuff. But I suppose coming into my 20s, into my 30s, I became more aware of the Black British movement, the struggle here, and aspects of identity. I think dance has always been something that's inspired me and empowered me, and something I've, again, going through my 20s, I've dipped more into. So I've gone from more of just creativity and expressing myself to actually learning certain dance styles and trying to understand how history, culture, all these different aspects can be understood and learned through the dance, which is empowering for me because I do not have any of my Indigenous languages really. So that's the way I can connect with my past and my future. To be honest, it's wide-ranging, so I would particularly pick out West African dance, and a few things that come to mind would be I think it was when Circo Media relaunched actually in Bristol, and that's probably longer back than it feels. It's probably getting on for 15 years, and they were fortunate enough to bring Circus Baobab over from Guinea, and they did, a whole week of community engagement, dance workshops, and that was life-changing for me, to learn some of the rhythms, some of the movements. And it was in the heart of St. Paul's. We had a big top on Portland Square, which was amazing. And then again, through opportunities, community learning, there was an OCN course put on in St. Paul's at Seed, when we had Seed, through Pax Productions, David Dravi-John. And through that, we studied actually some traditional and popular forms of Indian dance, and that was something that really resonated with me, that maybe I didn't expect. So when I started to perform in dance, actually a lot of it was Asian styles. But being someone of multi-ethnicities, I don't always know what my origins are, but I somehow find them in dance. And in fact, a lot of it happened where we are now in the Trinity Centre. So from an underage teenager coming down here on the weekends with my older sister, through the sort of jungle drum and bass movement, from the start of it really going through, that was where I could see social dance, people of different backgrounds coming together, and the bass and the music and the drums. To reflect on it now, I don't think I understand the power of it, but I'm not sure if a lot of other people can. I hope younger people can, but I think it's an unexplored episode of the Black British journey and wider than that. So street culture, inner city culture, class culture on the dance floor. And I think anyone who was there at the time knew that it was more than just partying on. There was a militancy about it. You know, the clothes we wear was always camo, by and large. And, you know, to be able to get on the stage and dance with your favourite DJ, but also to encourage the crowd, it was, something that always stays with me and something that I would like to go back and look at and try to explain it a bit more to myself and to other people.
You mentioned your mother as a primary influence. Were there other people, either in the kind of political world or even more locally, that you drew on, that inspired you?
Probably a neurotic Italian-German stepmom. You know, I think being able to, as a young person, as a child, mix in different circles with different cultures, different classes, was really important to mould me into the person I am today, which is why, you know, schools that have a good mixture of different ethnicities, classes, backgrounds is always a good thing, because it's important to learn how the other half lives. Again, going back to dancing, I can remember when Cabot Circus was on the cards. We'd rejected Merchants Quarter and Cabot Circus was up and running now. And I guess as well, my creative career has always been elbowing my way in sometimes to opportunities, because otherwise you're not involved. So one of those was putting a troupe together for the launch of Cabot Circus when it opened. Again, this has got to be over 10 years ago now, I don't know. But leading up to that, it was reflecting on how we felt as young people who grew up around this area, St. Jude's and Easton, and, you know, to see the car parks you might have played hide and seek in flattened, to see everything that you knew as a child gone, moving forward, but maybe you're not as involved as you'd like to be. One thing that came out of that was recording some music with some friends. At that time, we had a unit over in St. Paul's called Creative Souls, and making a dance routine to go with it, and then shooting that and just going out on the streets with the dance. And I think that was about 2007, where we created a show called Foundations to look at all this kind of gentrification and being left behind. So I think dance has always been a part of how I bring creativity and art into activism. And then, yeah, I suppose because I've been more involved in mainstream politics, I've tried to keep things like poetry, creative writing, filmmaking's probably my passion as well as dance, but it's kind of gone to the side. But I really want to try to move forward now, really bring in the creativity and the art to the forefront, but keeping the messaging strong. I enjoy theatre and all of that kind of stuff, and I'm part of a theatre troupe, and I think it was the old Vic equivalent, but in Bath, Theatre Royal, I think, and they were doing a programme, and I just applied for the role of Rosa Parks, but it was Rosa Parks, the Ghost of, based in Bristol, just a two-hander play, contemporary. Yeah, it was good. And then I went on to form more of a monologue, and again performed it here at Trinity for a Radio 4 event. Yeah, I think it was quite powerful, and something that's always in my catalogue of what I can bring out whenever I want to, really. But it was touring Washington, D.C. last year with the theatre troupe. There was an exhibition at the library about Rosa Parks in her own words. And there was lots that I didn't know about her. And one of the hard things was how she did so much, but she lived most of her life in poverty. So that was an eye-opener to say, OK, you can do activism, put yourself out there, but don't let yourself starve, because people will only care when you're dead. So that was a bit of a wake-up call for me.
How has been, so you brought up in the inner city area, BS5?
Yeah.
Yeah. And how would you say that shaped you as an artist and as an activist?
In my perception, and obviously I've only been to the primary school I attended, which was Easton Road, I think from what I experienced and what I could see, that there was a lot of us at a young age who were very intelligent, wanting to know more, very energetic. And I think that was heightened by all of our diversity, really. You know, it was as diverse then as it is now, if not more diverse, actually, back then in 70s and 80s. So that had an influence. The teachers that we had at school who were committed to, as much as they could, try and teach us about some of our culture, whether it was from the Caribbean, whether it was from Pakistan, etc. So cultural festivals and celebration was always part of our school life. And then, yeah, I think, you know, growing up on a street where you had older English people who, despite, you know, they might have had their views about certain things and they were obviously observing a lot of change, but they embraced us as a family, you know, my mum and my older sister. So, you know, we had older white ladies on the road probably in their 70s and 80s who we would call adopted Nan. And that's how we would address them because we didn't really know what the words meant. So it was all types of everyone. And that's a blessing as far as I'm concerned, because I'm comfortable to mix with anyone, you know. Growing up, my mum and my dad split up. My dad's African-Jamaican. My mum is white British. And I would say that my father was homophobic, really, but all of my mum's friends were gay men. And again, that's a blessing that I was able to grow up like that.
So how has your activism, has it changed over the years? If so, how?
I'm not sure if it's changed. I think the essence is the same. But sometimes you have to think about what you're trying to achieve and look at all the different strategies of getting that. I don't know if it's about more measured because, you know, you should have your bottom line, which can't be compromised. But yeah, to achieve success, then it's good to look at the unintended consequences if you can. But yeah, I feel that I've kept going, but maybe, I wouldn't say compromised myself, but I'm not yet the artist or activist I want to be. So I'm looking forward to my next chapter.
You were involved in the first iteration of the Black Lives Matter movement. Can you describe how you got involved and why?
I think part of it is being one of those people who probably for, you know, between 5 and 10 years is that person who's going to say it how it is, and people would wait for me to say something. And then because of that, people coming to me and saying, look, we need to do something. What do you think? So asking my opinion. And yeah, so from there, just supporting some people who I would say maybe are getting into activism and want to do something, are emotionally sparked. And a lot of it is that's how we get into it, because we are emotionally sparked and we react. So it was just through wanting to support other people who'd reached out, really. And yeah, I would say, you know, myself and Asher Craig, who was also there on that first protest, we'd only just come into politics, mainstream politics, within 2 months. We'd just been elected. And that was good to know that we were out there with our community side by side, and that we were not going to be deinstitutionalized. I'm not sure if you should do this, so I wouldn't do that kind of thing. So that was really powerful, and it was a good turnout. It was a good day, and it was encouraging to see so many faces that I've known throughout my life, really, be out there. And for some of them, maybe it was their first protest. So and to see young children, you know, shouting Black Lives Matter and that kind of thing, is something that will always stay with me. And I think it's important to appreciate and love that moment and not get too caught up in the American politics and the this and that and who's funding what and what's it all about and the conspiracy theories.
How do you think so this year, we've seen the return of Black Lives Matter as a movement. And you've been involved, sorry. How do you see it as different? Is it different to you, and if so, how?
It's raised more awareness, so more people are kind of understand what it's about. And in Bristol, we've had a group, All Black Lives Matter Bristol, who've been able to keep activity going. So I think it's encouraging that they've been out month on month since June, keeping the energy really. And I see much more follow through from different individuals and groups. So off the back of it, we've also had the formation of the African Caribbean Assembly Youth Chapter, which was kind of in the wings because there's the setting up of an Elders Council, and naturally there should be a Youth Council to shadow it. So I think, spurred on by what happened in Bristol in June, I think we're slowly moving towards a serious intention within the Black community to institution build.
You've been a campaigner against the particular figure in Bristol's slavery heritage. Can you describe what it meant for you when the statue of Edward Colston was toppled?
It was a big sense of relief, you know, joy mixed with relief, mixed with surprise, like a lot of people, you know. I didn't see that coming on that day at all. And yeah, we were streaming live because we weren't at the protest, but we had someone who was a roving reporter and streaming out to a few thousand people. And when we saw the scenes and we were told that the statue was coming down, I was on my feet, I was jumping with joy. And yeah, it's much of this history, it has a legacy that the book is not concluded. And I think, you know, with what happened this year and the fact that it was 400 years last year, year of returning Ghana, Virginia, commemorating 400 years, I just think I'm quite a superstitious person. And I think we're definitely on the road now to an eventual closure. You know, I do feel that. And I think it's important to really appreciate all of the history and to have your mind set on what you want to see as closure or as the end of this chapter, because I cannot continue to live with that shadow, live with that pain. Is something that we have to get over. That's all of us, whatever our background. It's a symbolic figure. It's a symbolic figure that should, what he represents, it should cut across any decent-minded person in terms of resistance to elitism and struggle and, you know, countering the justification of, by any standards, evil acts. And, you know, how can British society continue to stand on these myths and on these acts that have led to the destruction of humanity and the planet? And now it's coming full circle. So I think we're heading towards the reckoning time.
Going back to Black Lives Matter, maybe a similar question. The murder of African Americans sparks a protest in Britain. Could you explain why there's a connection, why people are motivated by what's happening in a US context?
I guess there's a lot of media attention. And maybe sometimes it's easier to see things that are outside of you, so you're observing into it with in a way, a disconnect between your actual experience in the country you're in. It's strange because in many ways we should feel connected as people of African descent with African Americans, and I feel that we should see ourselves as one nation, really. So there's that element to it, but I also think there's a lot of severed ties. So flip into something else. Henrietta Lacks and Helen Wilson Rowe, the artist who's promoting a lot about Henrietta Lacks, immortal DNA and blah, blah, blah. And actually she was from Virginia. So we don't know that, Bristol being part of the foundations of colonising Virginia may well have been connected to shipping people here, shipping people there. So I think there's quite deep roots to a lot of it. And there's probably more connections to African Americans than a lot of Black British people think. But yeah, I think the media here as well, maybe now it's been ignited where people can start to see, okay, yeah, this is bad for people of African descent in this country. But just like Black history, we've kind of looked more at America than we have ourselves until fairly recently, I think.
So it's important to also have the local situation around people. For example, what's happened to Rashid. Do you think it's important to have that in the frame as well?
I think it is important to have it in the frame. And I think I've realised that some of the challenges are how maybe others aren't as open-minded about who we are or where we fit into the picture. And I reflect on that with, no matter what some of us are doing here, how involved we feel, how connected we feel, other people, for example, in Ghana, will always see us as white and British. So that's a reality check as well.
And you've been to Ghana?
Yeah.
How has that informed and impacted upon your activism and your art?
It's impacted a lot, actually, because I've collaborated with many artists from Ghana. And at the moment, I put out a podcast with a colleague who's based in Ghana, a man called Aaron Ayi, who is a TV presenter. So, yeah, I would say it's like my second home over there. But again, it also gives me perspectives on, sometimes I can be naive about how I think, because it is not the thinking of other people in other places, so, yeah.
What have you learned in that regard?
As hard as it is to hear certain things, it's important to listen and try to understand what someone else's perspective is and then have a conversation about it and see if you can both shift a bit.
Give us an example.
Well, it would be, for example, there was an unveiling of some portraits by Helen Wilson Rowe, and her and I both spoke, and she very much describes herself as a Black woman. And for my visiting friend from Ghana, he really struggled with the idea that me and her are Black. So it took a lot of explaining. And for me, as someone of African descent, my son's in a football team where we're every single shade of Black, if you like. And for us, we see ourselves as Black. But for him, he wouldn't be able to see it. No matter how curly the hair is, no matter the features, he just couldn't see it. And at the same time, running towards that is this biblical idea that actually as a race of people, we've caused a lot of our own issues and we're doomed. So a kind of tinge of negativity there. But as I say to him, look, I'm not giving up. If you want to give up, that's up to you, but I'm not.
That's the curse of Ham type idea.
Some sort of Noah crap.
Oh, okay. So you've had to be, I guess there's a lot of resilience involved in that then, because you're an activist and a creative, and then actually going to Ghana, that's been challenged in terms of your participation.
It has a bit, but you do have a lot of festivals out there now that are international. So the Chale Wote Festival, I've performed there, and that went well. And yeah, so it's a journey for a lot of people, but, you know, we need educating on both sides.
So you're involved, we've talked about Black Lives Matter and mentioned a little bit about Colston. What do you see as the most pressing concerns of our time, other than, we've just mentioned Black Lives Matter, what are other pressing concerns that you put your energy into, or want to put your energy into?
Well, you know, people will say environmental concerns, that obviously I'm invested in that and would love to see change, you know, whether it's air pollution or whatever else. But I think the major issue is poverty. And that is always something that I will fight against, poverty, because it's not, it doesn't need to be that way. So, yeah, we can talk about reparations in terms of our community, but I feel there should be poverty reparations as well. And things like universal basic income, of course, it's starting to be piloted in some cities in the UK. And of course, we want to see that rolled out with COVID, with artists and creatives. We've seen how important it is to have a certain amount of income with less red tape, less hassle. Everyone gets it. But beyond that, why can't it be a reality for the world? Why can't the global south, which is the most impoverished, but has the most resources, why can't we see a shift in that so that we all can have an opportunity to live a good life?
Thank you. Can you tell us what's the interconnectedness between the reparations movement, environmentalism, poverty, anti-poverty movement that you'll describe?
They're all connected, and one of the early campaigns I got involved with as an adult was Jubilee 2000 Drop the Debt. And that really did bring all of those together, because it looked at the history of why some countries were so impoverished, how much debt they owed to the Western world, how there is a racial structure to that, and racism, environmental racism. And again, if we look at the origins of it all, it is, you know, you rarely have destruction of planet without destruction of people. So genocide and ecocide go hand in hand.
Perhaps it's also difficult for poorer countries to make environmentally sensitive decisions. I don't know.
It perhaps needn't be, but I think convention, habit, pressure, being forced really by other powers, I think many individuals, countries, states, people, institutions have become blurred and have lost their way, to the point where you can't solely put the blame on history or what someone else has done, but needs to take responsibility. So again, my friend was in total shock when I shared an article with him about the coltan in Congo. No idea. Was absolutely furious to think that actually, well, hang on a minute. So for us to move forward with our electric revolution and, you know, the green movement and all the rest of it, we can't really do that without places like Congo. With all the minerals and the wealth that they have coming out, why on earth is it in such a state of impoverishment? So that was a real stark wake-up call for a friend of mine, which was interesting. And again, I don't know, trying to overcome the idea of helplessness. So I really feel my sense of privilege in this country. It hasn't been an easy journey, but I know how much privilege I've got now. And with that comes with responsibility. And there'll be bits and pieces we can do here in this country. And you know, something that makes me continue is thinking how the little that I feel I can do here, it actually has a bigger impact in other countries where they don't have the privilege sometimes of even standing up and saying what's wrong. And I really feel that some of the focus now needs to be galvanising young people on the continent, because they are a huge, huge body that, once it's awake, can hopefully bring some of these changes through. And what else have they got to lose?
Do you think, is there a unique role for Black women? I'm thinking how to pose this question, but I guess in some ways I'm thinking, how has being a woman, a Black woman, shaped your activism? and your sense of that's important?
I think there's some kind of bravery that comes with being a woman of African descent, and just for me personally, there is some kind of inner sense of pride, or inner sense of, despite struggles, no, I'm worthy, and actually I'm going to say what I want to say, and you're just going to listen, and having the audacity to believe in what you're capable of, and the strength of the line that you come from. So, yeah, there's obviously been times when people try to intimidate, think that they're better than you, but that's something you can't play into.
You've entered the political mainstream. How has that changed your activism, your activist voice, your artist voice?
I think whilst it's meant I've been busy with a lot of things, and sometimes things that I don't care about. I don't care. This isn't what I want to do. I didn't sign up for this. Find someone who cares, because I don't care. I think what I've felt I've been lucky to do is still keep all those three things on the go. And I have had people say, you know, you're one of the more activist type politicians. So I'm quite happy to try and blur boundaries, and I'd like to do that more.
Well, sorry, as part of that, but you're definitely a unique mayor. Yeah. Could you describe something of that time for you? How you approached it?
No, it's a very busy time being Lord Mayor, and yeah, it was a great year. It was highly demanding. Didn't have much time to think or reflect, really. It was just go, go, go. But, you know, in anything, I can only be myself. And I will always be respectful to people, but I will always want to try and say something. I'm not there just for convention and blah, blah, blah. So, you know, now, months or over a year on, I do have people coming back to me about certain things. So things like the Bristol Savages, an old men's art club, they've come back to me all these months later and said, you know, we hear what you were saying now all this time on, and can I support them with X, Y, and Z? So, yeah, I like people. I care about all types of people. You know, I want everyone to be happy. So that was a good opportunity to meet new people, yeah, different circles.
And what I remember of that time is that you were still very much Cleo. It was in opening doors and doing things in ways that were not necessarily traditional to previous Lord Mayors.
Yeah. I don't believe in convention.
How do you balance making a living with being an artist?
It tends to be a struggle, you know. But I think, especially looking at other artists, I would always encourage people to keep being creative, keep being the artist, even though sometimes it doesn't pay, you know, keep that spark going.
Why?
Because I think it's more about your person, your well-being, what you need to put out into the world. And of course it can be hard, maybe for artists coming up who don't feel they've ever been recognised, maybe haven't had an exhibition, haven't had a chance to perform or get paid a decent wage. But some of these things take a long time.
I've got one more question. If you can imagine I'm a young, disgruntled teenager, and I think that there's no point in getting involved in politics or activism. A bit apathetic. What would you say to me?
I say don't be so damn selfish. If I'm up there still moving at 41, you need to get off your ass and join me, because I can't carry it for much longer. So it's either all of us or none of us. And then I would say, you know, come on, don't feel like that. I know the world doesn't look very encouraging right now, but come on, people have been through worse. Let's look at what we have got. Let's be happy with the little that we've got and understand how we might be able to be a little bit happier. But all these different bits and pieces that your friends might have, that all this pressure is telling you need, it's not actually going to make you happy. Just be healthy, be happy that you're eating today, and let's see how we can make things better for all of us.
I do have one last question. And you've spoken a lot about a broader understanding of diversity, but I guess much of your public activism has been known around people of African descent. Do you think there's a misunderstanding about what's the essence of what matters to you? Could you explain?
I think there is, yeah. I think people do have a certain perception that I'm all about the black issues and people of African descent, and of course that is a big part of what I care about, and I've got the personal investment because I am of that culture and that heritage, and I guess in some ways it's a searching journey for something that can improve our lives. But I care about many different types of people, you know. One of the things I tried to do more recently was say that, you know, we have the Race Equality Act, but for people who maybe are impoverished white in this country, there's no law that's going to help them. So it's only the goodwill of a policy that might say, you know, we're actually going to be reaching out to young people in Southmead, Hartcliffe, wherever these people are. How would these people like to be described? We have this term white working class. What does that mean? How does this community want to be described? And of course, I understand that for anything to really progress in this country, you have to look at who is the majority. And I'd imagine a lot of the majority is white working class. So unless you're willing to understand all the connections we have, and that we should have a focus on the things that are against us, I don't see how we can move forward. I don't see how things can move forward if you're not taking as many people with you as you can. Equally, I support and, you know, I love gypsy culture. So again, that's another community that I would be happy to fight for or support in any way that is needed. So I think if people met me face to face and had a chat, they might see me in a different light. But I'm definitely more conscious moving forward of unintended consequences, and particularly with reparations, how can it be communicated so that people who might feel a bit bitter about certain things and felt completely left behind in what they feel is their own country and has been for generations, how does it speak to them and how can it get them on board?
Could you just tell us a little bit about when you refer to reparations, what are we talking about?
Right, so it's a holistic type of repair. It's people of African descent, African heritage. It could cross over into colonialism, but let's just deal with the reparations. Let's name it as the transatlantic trafficking in enslaved people and how that can be repaired. And part of the first step for campaigners, and there's been a lot of people doing a lot of work for many years, is we need a recognition of the harm that was done, and a recognition that the legacy of that means that we're still in this state of being harmed. So one of the first steps is to have an all-party parliamentary commission of inquiry into truth and reparatory justice, which will be grassroots activists and politicians at the highest level who can spend time discussing all of this and coming out with a recommendation for reparations, because it isn't just about a paycheck. Lucky for us, we have this colour and we're going to get a paycheck. It's not about that, because that isn't actually going to repair the harm that's been done or the harm that continues to be done. So it's very wide-ranging. I don't have all the answers, but this is why I am lobbying for that commission, because that should come out with some answers. And we can see other states in places like America that are trying to mete out an element of reparations, because they acknowledge that that history is still infecting the present day.
And if someone wants to support your push with the Commission, what should they do?
The best thing to do for now is to seek more information online, and the overarching campaign is Stop the Maangamizi, MAANGIZI. I also have a Facebook page, Cleo Lake Future Politics. You'll be able to find some information on that. But also, well, this is not going to go out in time, but just search it. You know, one mainstream political party has passed a reparations motion at its conference that's just gone, and two councils in London, 2 borough councils, have also passed reparations motions. So part of the movement now is to get more councils to pass, and we hope end of January Bristol will be the next one.